Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome you to the Budget Subcommittee number 1 on Health and Human Services. Today, our hearing is focused on issues in the budget as it relates to the Community Care Licensing Program. We will have testimony from the Department, from Finance and LAO, from public speakers, and from Assemblymember Calderon, who has introduced a bill on this subject. So with that, we will get underway. I'd like to ask the participants to be as brief as you can. We appreciate you coming back to give us this update. We have many just timing conflicts with members being in various committees, including myself. So we're going to try to go fast. If you would, give us the high-level overview of what we need to know, what you want us to know, where there are challenges, and if there are questions from the committee, we appreciate your help there, and then we will hear from the public. With that said, we are glad to have a number of representatives who will take us through on this panel. From Community Care Licensing, we'll have Pat Leary and Pam Dickfoss. Of course, we're always glad to have Mr. Lightbourne here. And we have representatives from the LAO's office and the Department of Finance. With that said, take it away.
Hi, I'm Pat Leary, Mr. Chair, members. Pat Leary, I'm the Chief Deputy Director, and Community Care Licensing is one of my divisions at the department. What you have before you represents several years' worth of work. We began 2.5 years ago looking at our Community Care Licensing Division, doing a quality assurance review to ensure that as we were coming out of the deepest recession and budget shortfalls and staffing challenges, that we had the best program that we possibly could have. And we identified a number of gaps in the practice in our division and in the field. And what we proposed last year was a starting point in response to some of those areas that we had become aware of. There were also some high-profile incidents which assisted us in identifying where some of those gaps were. Last year's proposal really addressed getting at that foundational structure and making sure that our licensing program was one that the public could rely upon. The public has a reasonable expectation that licensing actually means something and means something to people who leave their loved ones in care, either in daycare or up through assisted living, that government regulation means something to health and safety. And so we addressed a number of those gaps in last year's budget. We added a quality assurance unit, a complaint hotline for individuals to call. We created some additional training. We restored some of the training. Our training had been cut back for our field staff from a 6-week training program to a 2-week training program. We restored that. We took a number of different elements and said that before we could do anything to go forward in increasing the frequency of inspections, which everyone agreed was necessary, we really needed to make sure that our practice was sound before we did that. The budget proposal last year was adopted. It has all been fully implemented, but it is in its infancy, and we're trying to let all of that happen and let those roots grow deeply. And that sets us up for phase 2, which is what you have in the budget before you, which is building on what we did last year and increasing the frequency of inspections. And I'll just talk a little bit about the frequency of inspections provisions, then I'm going to turn it over to Pam to talk about kind of the other options. A number of years ago, when the budgets were extremely tight and necessary reductions were made statewide, the department moved from a multi-year inspection frequency that was different for different types of facilities to a no less than once every 5-year provision, which nobody was on a policy basis supporting, but it was a necessary step to deal with the resources that were available. At that time, we took all facilities down to that. There was initially a requirement to do 10% random inspections, and then there were some triggers that if a certain number of complaints came in, that 10% would increase to 20%, and then if the trigger was hit again, it would go from 20% to 30%. That happened right away. So we're now conducting 30% random inspections on all facilities, not less than once every 5 years, and about 10% of the facilities get an annual inspection usually because of compliance issues. They're on probation, they're under a revocation action, they're required to have an annual review. The proposal in this year's budget is to steadily increase the frequency of inspections over the next several years, allowing us time to let those roots grow of those foundational things that I discussed, but also so that we can bring on board this new staff, get them trained, get them experienced in the field before we go too quickly, because we don't want to throw a lot of inexperienced staff quickly into something which is so critical. So our proposal starts in 16-17, going to a no less than once every 3-year frequency of visits. The following year, we would go to a no less than every 2-year frequency of inspections for children's residential and adult and senior care. Child care would remain at 3 years under our proposal. And then the following year, we would increase the frequency for adult and senior care facilities to yearly. So in the end, we would have a sort of a 3-2-1, depending on the program, that certainly no facility in the state would be inspected less than every 3 years. But for adult and senior care, it would be annually. And there was some rationale for that. There was some thinking behind that our child care facilities have parents coming and going twice a day. We have more eyes on those facilities than any of our other facilities. They're also less complex operations simply because they're not residential. They don't have people staying overnight. You don't have to deal with all the issues that happen in overnight care in addition to the day care. Our children's residential facilities, we have county social workers making required visits at least once a month, although they're not all required to be in the facility, but they have eyes on. They're kind of coming and going. The idea being that we have people who can alert us to problems in addition to having these frequent inspections. But for our adult and senior care, sometimes frequently these individuals may not have any family members that are visiting. They may not have, they certainly have no placement agencies as we do in children's residential. So there aren't as many people coming and going and looking at the facility. We do have the ombudsman, which provides critically necessary services, but they are sometimes stretched thin as well. So the concept behind the step down and the reason for those 3 programs is really about the complexity of care as well as how many additional people are coming and going. And so that's our proposal on inspection frequency, and I'm going to ask Pam to just talk very quickly about the other major portions of that proposal.
Thank you, Chief. And before you do, ma'am, I just want to have clerk call the roll, please.
Thurmond?
Here.
Bonta?
Here.
Chu? Grove? Jones?
Here.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is Pam Dickfuss. I'm the Deputy Director for Community Care Licensing, and as Pat just mentioned, the proposal last year allowed us to move from a model of austerity where we were investigating complaints and doing inspections to a model of doing increased inspections with this new proposal, as well as providing technical assistance both to our licensees and to our own staff. Part of our proposal last year, we asked for positions for a quality assurance unit, which is new territory for CCL. This unit is able to identify trends of top 10 citations that are provided across the state that we can actually work with licensees on technical assistance to those non-compliance issues, as well as working with our own with our own staff, looking to see if we're standardized across the state to provide our own staff with training. So it's been very beneficial to us, and as Pat said, we just initiated this program in November, and we feel like it's going to be very beneficial to the program. The BCP is also asking for 13 limited-term positions to catch up with the backlog. Over the past few years when we had the recession, the backlog accumulated, and so we're just now seeing that in order for us to be sustainable, we need these 13 positions to catch us up. In the meantime, we're providing some overtime. We're hiring retired annuitants and redirecting some staff where there's opportunities. But in order to catch up timely, the 13 positions will allow us to do that. Additionally, the populations in community care facilities are changing. The residents are more medically fragile, they have more health care needs, and we're asking for 3 nurse consultants to be able to provide guidance to our staff when we have issues where they need immediate attention in trying to evaluate the care needs of a resident in one of our facilities. So these 3 nurses will actually be able to direct us with policy direction, provide guidance to staff, and it's just one of the areas where we're deficient. We don't have any clinicians on our staff right now, and it's just basically a need for our facilities. We're also asking for 4 positions for a Southern California training unit. Approximately 60% of our staff reside in the southern part of the state, and it will be an opportunity for us to have a presence in Southern California, not to mention just reducing travel costs, but have face-to-face training where we can provide staff development we've had a lot of staff that have been in place for many, many years, and we need to be able to provide training where we're identifying those needs in our quality assurance unit. Also, we asked for a couple of positions for the technical assistance unit. Now, the technical assistance unit was, we've reinstituted it since 2000, I believe it was 2008, where that unit will be available for licensees to call in for questions of noncompliance. If they have a question about a statute or a regulation, they can actually call this number. We can put training modules on the website for the licensees, as well as we're going to use that unit to work hand in hand with our quality assurance unit where they're identifying trends of needs where training would be beneficial. So the technical assistance unit will work both sides of the equation, so it won't be just an enforcement part of the program, but we're also going to try to prevent some of these non-compliance issues to hit them head first before they turn into healthcare issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morales, anything from the LAO's office?
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. I'm Lourdes Morales with the Legislative Analyst Office. Overall, we do find that the governor's proposal is responsive to what we see as legislative interest in increasing the inspection frequency of these facilities. However, we do find that it is premature to approve the proposal in totality. We understand that there is concern that the current 5-year interval is too lengthy and potentially places vulnerable populations at risk. And increasing inspection frequencies could increase the ability to detect potential threats before harm occurs. We therefore do recommend approval of stage 1 of the proposal, that is moving towards at least once every 3-year inspections for all facility types by June 2017. However, we recommend that future year changes to further increase inspection frequency be based on the need to target inspections on the most problematic facilities based on data-driven analysis, rather than on broad facility type as proposed by the governor. Our recommended approach is not intended to reduce enforcement resources, but rather allocate enforcement resources more cost effectively. This model that the department would develop to help target resources would build the flexibility and capacity within the division to visit poor performing facilities even more frequently than is proposed through the governor's proposal. That is, some facilities may need more than annual inspections. We therefore recommend the legislature to reject the proposal beyond that first stage and direct the department to develop this data-driven model. As to the other components of the proposal, we think that they are reasonable next steps and build on the platform that was approved in the budget last year. Thank you.
Thank you. And anything, Mr. Silva or Chile from Finance, anything? Thank you. Any questions from the committee? I want to ask our colleague, Assemblymember Calderon, to join us. He has introduced legislation that would require the frequency of visits to be more frequent and annual. And I have to say that I agree with him, and here's why. I get nervous at the suggestion that in child care facilities we can put it on the parents to alert us to concerns. Yes, parents are going to speak up when they see something, but for me to default to the parents having to be the ones to see things, to me, places, one, parents in a very awkward position. It is awkward to have to report your child care provider and then expect that your child will continue in that child care facility. And I'm speaking from experience. I've removed my child from a child care provider before where a staff person made a joke about something that made me concerned about the safety of my child. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think about anything other than getting my kid out of that program. And so for me to default to the parents as our backstop, I understood the logic. I disagree with its effectiveness. So anyway, I think I'm sensitive to what you shared, Madam Chief, about the need to ramp up. I'm totally sensitive to that. Having said that, I think our ramp-up ability, if you will, has to be tempered with our ability to also be careful, be cautious, and protect those who need our protection. So I welcome our further conversation. We're going to hear from the public shortly. But first, I want to call up Assemblymember Calderon to share with us his vision, his legislation, and I know that he has some other ideas for us to consider. So, Member Calderon, it is an honor to have you join us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I really appreciate your time. This is an issue I've been working on this is going on my third year since I first came here. And, originally when we had introduced the bill, it was specific to RCFEs, keeping in mind that we were always going to add in the child daycare component. However, once we were able to get it to appropriations, that bill, just specifically dealing with RCFEs, was given a price of about $7 million. And, I kind of looked at the genesis from how did we get from where we were to where we are now? How did we go from annual inspections of every single community care facility, and around 2007 or so, we have a $5 million cut to the department, and over the next couple years, we then moved to once every 5 years. We're now the worst in the nation. Again, California setting the standard. And worst in the nation. And, there is no plan to get it back. And so every facility is at, annual inspections of $5 million. We get the $5 million cut. I get there's some growth, so there's going to be some more costs associated with more facilities. But my bill, just dealing with only the RCFEs, was pinged at $7 million. Of course, that bill ended up being held in appropriations due to that cost. I introduced the bill again next year with not just RCFEs, but also community care facilities. And originally it started as, okay, this bill is introduced in 2014, effective January 1, 2015. Every facility, community care facility, is going to be annual inspections. Well, that ended up getting to appropriations. We were very thrilled that the department was willing to work with us. And so they had an idea of what you're basically seeing in the budget now, which is a phased-in approach, but leading by 2018 or 19 to annual for every single inspection. And, in that previous year, we ended up seeing $7 million going to the department, which is pretty much the exact number they told me that they needed to get to annual inspections, at least for RCFEs. But we didn't get there. Now we have a phased-in approach outlined in the budget. And with my bill, that number, once we added in the child daycare centers, jumped to about $20 million. And, of course, that became an issue where we got held in appropriations once again. And so I've reintroduced the bill. I took a look at the governor's proposal in the budget. And again, I am glad that the department is recognizing the importance of the issue. And it's not that I ever felt that they didn't recognize it. I just didn't know that the right amount of time and energy was being spent trying to find a solution to get back to annual inspections. Other states do it. If they can, why can't we? And when it comes to what they're proposing, absolutely agree with annual inspections for the RCFEs, but I still agree that we need to find a way to get to annual inspections with those kids. We are up here to make decisions about how we invest our money, how we invest state resources, and what constitute a legitimate reason to invest that money. And I think that given the subject matter of what we're dealing with, this is a really good reason to try and find a way to get to annual inspections of not just RCFVs, but child daycare centers. You know, you could find all the solutions in the world to try and find a better way of getting data to try and get the desired outcome. It will never be as good as having every single year, unannounced, no matter what, somebody is going to be showing up in your facility to check on what you're doing. Kids have died. Seniors have died. These are our family members. These are the people that are most important to us. These are the people that are most vulnerable. Ms. Grove, I know you've had issues with your community care facilities in your own area. This is important, and I think it is worth the time and attention to figure out how we get to that. What can we do to be creative? We're all here for a reason, because we really want to make a difference back home, but not just back home in the state. And the only way, in my opinion, to do that is to find a creative solution to get to annual inspections of every single community care facility in the state. I believe that is our duty as legislators to find a way to make that happen. And I don't think you do it by going over the head of the department. I think they absolutely have to be at the table helping us find a solution. I think they are more than capable of helping us find that solution. I think what we're seeing here is that effort in some way. I understand there's working with the governor, trying to figure out how we do this, but I think it's worth our time, and I think it's worth our attention, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you allowing me to come speak to you and the members of the committee. It's obviously an issue I care a lot about. It's obviously an issue I'm very passionate about, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to try and find a solution to this problem.